Earlier this week, we talked about Northern Illinois and the fact that I think they're making a bad decision, a mistake, by leaving the Mid American Conference. Now, Northern Illinois leaving the Mid American Conference doesn't necessarily mean that the MAC is going to expand again. Doesn't mean that they're going to backfill that slot. They have UMass coming in already for the upcoming season. It it lends itself anytime somebody leaves one conference for another. People start questioning, people start asking, thinking about what the next domino is to fall. And if the Mid American Conference wants to expand, and I'm on the record saying, I think with all of the changes happening to college football, with nation to nation conference, nationwide conferences, coast to coast, different time zones, etc., that the MAC, with its schools in Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, then Illinois, and New York, perfect. There needs to be some semblance of geographic uniformity at some point in college football that still makes sense. And I think that the MAC, even without Northern Illinois, depending on who or even if they add somebody, still makes a lot of geographic sense. I was on the record, hey, don't touch the MAC. Nobody should want to raid the MAC for their backfill of who is going to be filling the next seat in musical chairs. Didn't want that to happen. It happened, so here we are. And so I think it's fun to speculate and talk about and consider who the MAC should consider to replace Northern Illinois, should they want to. And I think that there are schools in three different groups. And so I think those three different groups are the four Ds: North Dakota State, North Dakota, South Dakota, South Dakota State. It certainly feels as if it is all four or none. Now, that's $20 million that those schools need to come up with to jump from FCS to FBS. And to tell you the truth, and I don't think this is a knock against the MAC, but it probably is. North Dakota State, and we've talked at length about this, North Dakota State, I don't think, has been holding out for an offer to the MAC to jump to FBS. I don't think North Dakota State has been holding out for an offer from the Mountain West to jump to the FBS. And when I talked about North Dakota State a few weeks ago, one of the recurring comments that I got was, you can't just jump from FBS, you can't just jump from FCS to FBS. You have to be invited. And nobody has invited North Dakota State. I am here to tell you that if North Dakota State wanted to be an FBS school, they would be an FBS school. If North Dakota State had given any inkling whatsoever to the Mountain West that, hey, we're in, North Dakota State would be in the Mountain West. If North Dakota State, maybe even to the pack, whatever number they are at right now, I'm here to tell you that if North Dakota State wanted to jump, they would have jumped. And so I don't view the four Ds as a really likely scenario. I don't view North Dakota State, North Dakota, South Dakota State, South Dakota leaving their spot as big fish in relatively still medium-sized pond for the Mid-American Conference. I just don't think that that is a likely scenario. I think it would be a slam dunk for the MAC to get the four, in Montana, and Montana State fans would probably, the four best FCS programs available into your conference would be a really big win for the MAC that could probably use a really big win right now after losing what some are calling its marquee program. I don't know that Northern Illinois is its marquee program. Has it been at the highest of the conference's heights in the last 15 years? Yes. They played in a BCS game, a not January 6th, January New Year's 6 bowl game. But I don't think that it has been the best and most tried and true program in the Mid American Conference for years and years and years. I don't think it has that distinction. But if you're going to replace Northern Illinois with North Dakota State, South Dakota, South Dakota State, that's a slam dunk for the MAC. I don't know that you're going to accomplish, because it feels like they're all a package deal. And again, if North Dakota State wanted to be in the FBS, they'd be in the FBS. I think the most likely option in MAC expansion, if they want to expand, is from the more directionals category: Western Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky, Middle Tennessee State. Western Kentucky and Eastern Kentucky especially makes a lot more geographic sense than I think people think. I'm on I believe that when the Big Ten expanded, that they should have kicked the tires on Kentucky a lot more than they did, if they ever did. Lexington, Kentucky is, and especially like the northern parts of Kentucky are as much Midwest, and I would argue significantly more. Like Louisville is a Midwest town. Lexington is a Midwest is a more tweener between a Midwest and a Southern city, but they are not the Southern cities that you think of when you think of the SEC. Eastern and Western Kentucky are not geographical outliers in the Mid American Conference that you might think. Middle Tennessee State is a little bit more because they're a little deeper into Tennessee, a little farther than maybe you think into Tennessee. But the trips from Miami and Ohio and Bowling Green and Toledo to Eastern Kentucky and Western Kentucky are not nearly as far as you think, and they're a lot closer than UMass is, even to Buffalo. So I don't think that those three schools should be ruled out. Eastern Kentucky has the problem of if they want to move up from FCS to FBS, but it sure would put you on a somewhat more level playing field with your rival Western Kentucky if you are in the FBS. And the MAC, despite it maybe not being what it once was, because it once was, if not the top, one of the top group of five conferences, where that was where future coaches were having their proving grounds, were in the Mid-American Conference. That is where you went to learn on the job and then took that to a Power Four program. It doesn't necessarily work out that way anymore. But for Eastern Kentucky, if they were to join the MAC, they're in a better conference in football than Conference USA is. That's my opinion. And so Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee State certainly seemed like a package deal. Though when the MAC expanded, when they added UMass, it certainly sounded as if Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee State were their kind of preferred candidates, and Middle Tennessee State, and not to run them down at all. They're basically saying, like, hey, our prospective students don't come from Ohio and Michigan, Indiana, New York. Our prospective students come from Kentucky and Tennessee and North Carolina and Alabama. So I don't blame them for sticking it out in Conference USA. But I think if you are going to say, hey, these are the programs that are more likely than not, or if you're going to say which one of these tiers is the most likely to have one of these schools join the MAC, I think it's one of those three to fill Northern Illinois' spot. And then I put the list of outliers. I don't think that these are great options. Delaware is joining the FBS. They would have to get out of their deal with Conference USA. I think Delaware probably should have wanted to be in the MAC more than Conference USA, but I don't run that athletic department. I'm not their president. I don't get to make that call. But that it just seems like a maybe a bit more of a natural fit. And then three FCS schools: New Hampshire and Rhode Island. I don't think either one of them have FBS aspirations, but if you're trying to have a travel partner with UMass, and not just in football, but UMass is joining in everything, it's a lot easier to make the trip to Amherst and then New Hampshire, Amherst and then Rhode Island. And Illinois State has a sneaky, decent stadium. They have a good geographic location for the rest of the MAC. They have a pretty good football program, all things considered. Their basketball program's pretty good. But I think Illinois State would be one of those kind of like, oh, I didn't expect to see them. And I'm sure that the MAC would love to maintain a presence in Illinois somehow, some way. So whether it's Illinois State, Eastern Illinois, I would say Western Illinois is probably not as high of an option. Not a good football program historically. Basketball program is not good. But Eastern Illinois has had some success at the FCS level, as has Illinois State. And when you can get a state university in your conference, the MAC's going to think about that a little bit longer than maybe you think overall. But I think those are the options you can throw out. Um, the idea that like UConn is going to be a football only member, I don't buy that for a second. You can throw Missouri State, or um, you're going to lure Marshall back from the Sun Belt. I think those days and those days are long gone, and those ships have sailed. So I think that's your kind of group of if the MAC wants to expand, if the MAC wants to replace Northern Illinois, and I don't know that it's a slam dunk that they do, I think those are the options. Want to know your thoughts. If you're a MAC football fan, let me know in the comments down below. Who do you want to add into the conference? Who do you want to see be a conference rival to your favorite program? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. See you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.